In the heart of autumn, three friends, Emily, Josh, and Sarah, decided to escape the city's hustle for a weekend retreat at a newly listed Airbnb named Hawthorne House. Nestled in the outskirts of a sleepy town, the house was a charming, old-fashioned two-story structure surrounded by a thicket of hawthorn trees. Upon arrival, they were captivated by the house's quaint beauty and isolation. The interior was a mix of modern comfort and antique elegance. However, as the days passed, they started noticing peculiarities. Objects seemed to move on their own, doors they had closed were found ajar, and the arrangement of furniture subtly altered. It was as if the house lived and breathed, rearranging itself. Chalking it up to forgetfulness, they tried to ignore the odd occurrences until one night, things escalated. Emily woke up to faint shuffling noises downstairs. Believing it to be Sarah or Josh, she descended the stairs only to find the living room empty, but in disarray. As she turned to head back, a fleeting shadow caught her eye, disappearing into the walls. The next morning, Emily shared her experience, but her friends were skeptical, attributing it to her vivid imagination. However, when they returned from a walk in the town, they found their belongings scattered, as if someone had rummaged through them. Unease settled over the trio, the feeling of being watched growing stronger. Determined to uncover the truth, they decided to stay up and monitor the house. As the clock struck midnight, the faint sound of footsteps echoed through the halls. Following the sound, they stumbled upon a hidden door behind a bookshelf, leading to a narrow passage. The passage twisted and turned, leading them to a small, concealed room within the walls. It was a lair, filled with food wrappers, clothes, and photographs of them sleeping, taken from angles only possible inside the house. Their blood ran cold as the horrifying truth dawned on them. They weren't alone. As they turned to leave, a figure emerged from the shadows. A gaunt, wild-eyed man, his presence reeking of malice. He was the Frogger, living within the walls of Hawthorne House, moving through hidden passages. He lunged at them, intent on silencing the witnesses to his clandestine existence. A frantic struggle ensued, filled with screams and the sounds of a scuffle. In a desperate bid for survival, Emily managed to break free and run toward the main door. She threw it open, screaming for help. The commotion attracted the attention of a neighbor who called the police. The Frogger, realizing escape was impossible, attempted to vanish back into his hidden sanctuary, but was apprehended by the arriving officers. The friends were shaken but unharmed, their weekend retreat turning into a harrowing tale of survival. As they left Hawthorne House for the last time, the once charming residence now stood as a haunting reminder of the horror that lurked within, a hidden menace that had watched, waited, and almost claimed their lives in the shifting shadows of the house. The aftermath was a blur of police questions and flashing lights. The Frogger, it turned out, had been a local man reported missing years ago. He had somehow found his way into the hidden passages of Hawthorne House and made it his secret refuge, unseen by the outside world. The revelation sent shockwaves through the small town. How could someone live undetected within the walls of a house for years? The story of Hawthorne House became the subject of local legend, a tale of unseen terror lurking in the most ordinary places. For Emily, Josh, and Sarah, the ordeal left a lasting imprint. They found themselves double-checking doors, jumping at shadows, and haunted by the thought of hidden eyes watching them. The sense of safety in their own homes had been irrevocably shattered. As they drove back to the city, the house dwindled in the rearview mirror, but its memory lingered like a dark cloud over their minds. They spoke little on the drive back, each lost in their thoughts, processing the harrowing events they had survived. The experience bonded them in a way they never expected, but it also opened their eyes to the darker aspects of human nature and the mysteries that can hide within four walls. Hawthorne House, with its deceptive charm, had concealed a terrifying secret, one that would forever remind them that sometimes the real horrors aren't in ghost stories or myths, but in the hidden depths of the ordinary, waiting silently in the shadows.
In the heart of the Appalachian Mountains, nestled in a serene valley, stood an old but well-maintained Airbnb. The Donovan House, as it was known, had been recently renovated, boasting modern amenities juxtaposed with its rustic charm. It was here that Mia and her friends, Alex and Jenna, decided to spend their long weekend getaway. The first night passed uneventfully, filled with laughter, board games, and stories by the fireplace. However, as they settled into their beds, an unsettling sound broke the night's silence, a faint scratching, followed by an indistinct murmuring coming from the basement. The next morning, over coffee, they joked about the house being haunted. The host, Mr. Donovan, a friendly middle-aged man, had told them the basement was off-limits due to safety concerns, but the nocturnal noises piqued their curiosity. On the second night, the sounds grew louder and more desperate. There was a rhythmic thumping, like a heart beating against the wooden floor, accompanied by a low, guttural moaning. Unable to resist, Mia, Alex, and Jenna decided to investigate. In the dead of night, armed with a flashlight, they found the basement door surprisingly unlocked. The stairs creaked under their weight as they descended into the darkness. The air grew colder, and the smell of damp earth and something foul assaulted their senses. The basement was vast, more extensive than the house itself. In the far corner, a dim light flickered behind a stack of old furniture. As they approached, the murmuring became clearer, a language they couldn't comprehend, yet it filled them with an inexplicable dread. Behind the furniture, they found the source of the light, an ancient-looking well, its stones covered in strange symbols, illuminated by an eerie glow emanating from its depths. The murmuring was louder here, and as they peered down, something moved in the shadows below. At that moment, Mr. Donovan appeared behind them, his face twisted in anger and fear. He explained in hushed tones that the well was ancient, older than the house itself, and it was the reason he bought the property. It was a gateway, he said, to somewhere else, a place not meant for the living. He confessed to feeding the entity in the well, believing it would grant him eternal life. But his offerings were no longer enough. It wanted more. It wanted them. As they turned to flee, the entity emerged, a mass of tentacles and eyes, its form shifting and twisting. The basement door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Mr. Donovan's screams were the last thing they heard before the creature enveloped him. Mia, Alex, and Jenna huddled together, watching in horror as the creature retreated back into the well, leaving behind an eerie silence. They were alone but alive. As dawn broke, they managed to escape, vowing never to speak of what occurred. But even now, when the night is still, they can hear a faint murmuring, a reminder of the horror that lurks beneath the Donovan house.
In the heart of the dense Appalachian woods, nestled a quaint, rustic Airbnb, inviting and serene. Sarah and Mike, a young couple seeking an escape from the city's bustle, were instantly charmed by its secluded tranquility. The host was a pleasant, middle-aged woman who lived a few miles away, leaving them to their peaceful retreat. On their second evening, as a storm brewed outside, Sarah discovered a leather-bound journal tucked away in the bedside drawer. The first few pages were innocuous, filled with the musings of a traveler named Tom. But as they delved deeper, the entries grew increasingly erratic and disturbing. Tom wrote of whispers in the night, shadows flitting just at the edge of vision, and an unnerving feeling of being watched. He described how the house seemed to shift subtly, corridors elongating and rooms reshaping, but always just beyond clear sight. He obsessed over a peculiar symbol he found scratched under the dining table, drawing it over and over in the margins of the journal. Sarah felt a chill reading the entries, and Mike scoffed at the idea of anything supernatural. But as the night deepened and the storm raged, they couldn't shake off a creeping sense of unease. The house creaked and groaned in the wind, and they heard faint, unintelligible whispers echoing through the halls. Sleep eluded them, each noise amplifying their anxiety. Sarah woke from a restless slumber to find Mike absent from their bed. She found him in the dining room, staring blankly at the underside of the table, tracing his fingers over a strange angular symbol carved into the wood. "What are you doing?" she asked, a tremor in her voice. Mike didn't respond, his eyes glazed, fixated on the symbol. When Sarah reached for him, he suddenly snapped out of his trance, confused and disoriented. He didn't remember leaving the bed. The next day was oppressively silent. The storm had passed, but a heavy fog enveloped the house, dampening the world outside. Sarah suggested they leave, but Mike insisted they stay, his demeanor increasingly detached and sullen. That night, Sarah awoke to an empty bed again. Frantic, she searched the house, finding Mike in the attic, a place they hadn't explored before. He was hunched over a makeshift altar, the same symbol from the journal etched around it. Tom's journal lay open next to him, pages fluttering in a non-existent breeze. "Mike, we need to leave," Sarah pleaded, her voice quivering with fear. But Mike was entranced, murmuring incoherent phrases that chilled Sarah to her core. She grabbed the journal, hoping to break whatever hold it had on him. As she tore the pages, the house seemed to shudder, a low, guttural groan reverberating through the walls. Suddenly the trance broke, and Mike collapsed, gasping for air. They fled the house, leaving the journal's remnants scattered in the attic. As they drove away, the fog lifted and the house seemed to recede into the woods as if it was never there. They spoke little of the night, each lost in their own harrowing thoughts. Weeks later, Sarah received a call from the Airbnb host, inquiring about a leather-bound journal they might have found. Sarah denied seeing it, her voice steady but her hand trembling. The host sighed, a note of sadness in her voice. "I had hoped it was lost for good. Be careful, dear. Some things once read can never be unread." The line went dead, leaving Sarah staring at the phone, the echoes of that nightmarish experience whispering in the back of her mind.